Hello everyone, welcome to the first chapter of the Huawei HCIP OpenELR course. This section, we will continue to introduce the common service management of OpenELR. In the previous section, we have learned about the key features, operating architecture, and working mechanism of Nginx, as well as the two core functions, reverse proxy and load balancing. This section describes how to install and configure the Nginx.
Now let's prepare a server running the x86 OpenELR 22.03 system to help yourself with the Nginx installation and basic functions configurations. Now we run the command uname-a. The Linux kernel is 5.10. cat etc os release. The operating system is OpenELR 22.03. We run the yum command to install Nginx. Yum install -y and Nginx. After installation complete, we run Nginx-v to check the current Nginx version, that is 1.21.5. Then we can start the Nginx service. The Nginx process has been generated in bin directory when yum installs Nginx. Therefore, you can run the Nginx command to start the service. We can run the ps-f grep Nginx command to check whether the Nginx process exists. And here we can see the master process and the worker process are started. Because my server is a 4-core server, so you can see that 4 Nginx process are started. That is, its working process generally matches the number of cores of the server. And also you can enter the accessible public IP address of the server, check the browser's page. So here we can see the welcome page is displayed. Welcome to Nginx on OpenELR. So indicates that the Nginx is installed and started successfully. Actually, common Nginx commands are similar to Apache. Let's see. First one, Nginx-t command used to check the configuration file. And then Nginx-v used to check the Nginx version. If we change to Nginx-V command, it's used to check the detailed Nginx version, compiler version, and configuration parameters. And if we run Nginx-s and then stop to forcibly stop Nginx, and we can run Nginx-s quit command to gracefully stop Nginx. For forcibly stop Nginx, they immediately stops processing new requests and interrupt all ongoing requests. As a result, client requests may fail or page may not be properly displayed because Nginx cannot process requests being processed. And gracefully stop, it means Nginx is allowed to complete the request being processed, and then stop. This means that during this stop process, new requests will no longer be processed, but the current request will continue to be completed. Therefore, if you want to stop the Nginx service immediately without considering the current request, you can forcibly stop the Nginx service. If you want Nginx to complete all current requests before stopping, you can run the graceful stop quit command. And then if you run the Nginx-s reload, it means restart Nginx. Reloading does not affect the current connection. It only enables Nginx to read the configuration file again, which is faster and applicable to small configuration updates. If you need to stop the Nginx service and restart it completely to apply the configuration changes or rectify the problem, you can restart the Nginx service. After restart, the Nginx stops the running instance and restarts it. This is more easily done by using system control restart or by calling the stop and start command of Nginx directly. Restarting Nginx is a more thorough process that interrupts all connection but ensures that the Nginx starts with a new configuration. And also, the Nginx configuration file is stored in etc Nginx directory. So you can view the directory after the tree command is installed. Now let's back to the command line interface of the server. First we install tree. We use tree to view the etc Nginx directory. Here etc Nginx conf.d is similar to the extended configuration file of Apache, and it's also the extended configuration file directory of Nginx. The main configuration file is etc Nginx nginx.conf. Fast CGI parameters is used to translate Nginx variables of PHP to identify. MIME types file is used to configure the stopped MIME media file types. UWSGI parameters translate Nginx variables of patient to identify. And then we use vim to open the main configuration file and view conf.d file. We use set number displays the line number, and first 5 to 11 are the global configuration of Nginx, and the running user is the Nginx user. Similarly, we can use till etc password. And then you can see that a new user is added to the system after the Nginx is installed. Number of working process is auto. That is the number of working process checked by running ps-ef. By default, the number of working process is the same as number of CPU cores on the server. And the error log path is var nginx error log. The Nginx main process ID is stored in nginx.pid file in the run directory. The configuration file of the import external function module, that is .conf file, in the user share Nginx modules directory. And from line 30 to 50, performance setting the event driving model of Nginx to handle 24 concurrent connections. It is a very high value, meaning that the Nginx can process a large number of requests. And lines 17 to 55 indicates the HTTP module configuration of Nginx. And the log format indicates the error log format. Access log indicates the path for storing accessing log. And send file indicates the efficient file transformer mode. The TCP no push indicates whether data packets are sent immediately. On indicates no. The off indicates yes. This parameter is used for optimization. If the message is sent immediately, congestion may occur. So generally, the value on is recommended, indicating that the message is not sent immediately. And TCP no delay, if value is off, the communication delay and bandwidth in usage increases. It should have good effect in communication scenarios with high latency and large data volume. If value is on, the number of small packages and response speed increases. The recommended scenarios communication with high timeliness. Keep alive timeout to 65. The persistent connection timeout period is 65 seconds. And type hash max size indicates the collision rate affect the hash table. A large value consumes more memory, but retrieval speed is faster. Smaller value use less memory, but retrieval speed is affected. Lines 30 to 31 means that if Nginx cannot determine the MIME type of a file, it will default set the file type to application octet stream, a common binary file type. In addition, Nginx obtains MIME type information from the etc Nginx MIME types file. Therefore, this file usually contains a large number of MIME types and corresponding file name extensions, which are used to help Nginx correctly set MIME types. And then 36 includes conf.d stars.conf indicates that the configuration file is stored in conf.d directory. And then line 38 to 54, the defined server block indicates that the IP version 4 and version 6 addresses of port 80 are used to listen to HTTP requests. Server name indicates the server name of server block, which is underscore. This means that this server block will handle all requests that do not match any other server block. Root, this command sets the root directory of server block to use share Nginx HTML. That is the directory to which the Nginx sends the request file. Include, this command contains other configuration files. Here it contains all the configuration files, those whose name end with conf. An error page sets the error page. If HTTP status code in the request is 44 and the client failed to process the request, the Nginx returns the /44 page. If the HTTP status code of the request is 500, 502, 3, or 504, the Nginx returns /50x.html page. And then for locations, it's used to match the request URI and perform specific operations based on a matching result. If the request URL is 40x or 50x, the Nginx returns an error page. So in general, the configuration of the server block means that the Nginx will listen on HTTP request on port 80 and set the request files to shared Nginx HTML directory. If the request URI is 40, 50 HTML, an error page is returned. And by default, the HTTPS configuration is commented out in the last paragraph. The default listening port is 44.3, and the certificate and key are stored in PKI Nginx directory. This is the Nginx main configuration file. Now let's practice common configuration methods, such as static resources access configuration, the same as Apache. First, we modify the first part of the global configuration in the main configuration file and modify the username and number of processes mentioned just now. So in this example, change the username. We open the file. Change the username Nginx to nobody. Change the number of processes to 8. User nobody and worker processes 8. Save the modification, exit. The same we need to run the nginx-s reload command to reload the Nginx configuration. After reloading, we run the ps-ef and pipe-grep nginx command. To view the processes details, so here the number of worker process becomes 8. And the username becomes nobody. And here the master processes, however, remains the root processes. If the users of worker processes is changed to nobody, the Nginx worker process runs as a nobody user. The nobody user is a special user in the Linux system. It is used the run service process to prevent these processes from running as a root user and reduce security risks. If malicious users control these service processes, the damage they can cause is limited to the rights of the service process, not the entire system. So therefore, setting the Nginx working process user to nobody can improve system security and prevent potential security vulnerabilities. Then the second step is to create static resources. And we want to be able to use the domain name 3w.test.com. So you can access the home page specify the Nginx service, image files, and test files. So we run make directory -p to create the directory for storing static resources. We use data Nginx directory. And then we create a home page file. Touch data nginx.html. We enter hello open Euler. So we run the echo command. Hello open Euler to data nginx index.html. Then we create a txt file in this directory. So we touch nginx test.txt. Enter the content hello nginx. We echo nginx to data nginx test.txt. And next step, we copy the Nginx logo on the browser access page in default home directory to the new created static resources directory. The previous image is in the default user share Nginx HTML file. So we open and check. And here we have index.html and also 404.550x and Nginx logo.png. So now let's copy it to the new created static resources Nginx directory. We use cp Nginx HTML to the new static directory. HTML and then Nginx logo. And check that there are the Nginx logo.png and test.txt hello Nginx. So we have configured these static resources, and to modify the static web page, we need to create a configuration file about the new static website. So we need to create it in the sub-configuration directory, which is conf.d. So we use vim to add static.conf. Then we enter the content in the static.conf file. The paragraph means listening 81 port, name is test.com. The root main directory is data nginx and default page is index.html. Save and quit. And we run nginx-t to check whether the configuration is correct. And if it feedback for OK, and successful, it means the configuration is correct. We use Nginx to reload the service. Now we need to access the Nginx service through the domain name, that is configuration domain name resolution on the local computer. 3wtest.com, mapping between the local computer and Nginx server. So therefore, we open the host file on the local computer. And here the public IP address of the Nginx server is added to 3w.test.openeuler.com, mapping to the domain name. This is to avoid test.com too simple to be blocked. We use browser to open its feedback, hello, OpenEuler. We access the subdirectory Nginx logo.png because the default interface we set is index.html, so the return is hello OpenEuler. If you want the logo page to be displayed, you need to enter the path. The system now returns the Nginx logo image. And if you want to return the .txt file, we need to enter 3w.test.com test.txt in path. It returns hello Nginx.
This section describes how to install and test the Nginx, configure the main page and static resources, and how to implement the load balancing functions of the virtual host and reverse proxy. Thank you for watching.